Hi everyone, I hope you're doing well. Today was supposed to be a journal club about sports hypnosis, but we ended up with a presentation in that regard. So yeah, let's discuss this article. Let me make it larger a little bit so you can see what's going on here. Okay. So this is the third session of evidence-based hypnotherapy journal club. Let me just check something, if everything is all right. Okay, perfect. So yeah, today we want to discuss about an article about sports hypnosis. And my name is Reza, I'm from Hypnosis, and this session is sponsored by Luxury Corporate Cruises. And the article we want to focus on tonight is effects of visualization and imagery training on sport performance using sports hypnosis. So the article starts with this question. Actually, the value of imagery in sports has widely acknowledged, and the contribution of hypnosis to enhancing athletes' performance is also recognized. The article tries to answer this question. Does hypnosis help to enhance the imagery techniques or not? And they define imagery for the purpose of clarification in this article as imagery involves making mental images, seeing and feeling you playing and performing a certain behavior without actually doing the behavior. Imagination aside, hypnosis can help a sport person to overcome issues of self-doubt, hone the skills, fine-tune a technique, and have a level of self-belief and confidence. And hypnosis can help the athlete to have a very intense concentration, which is required to be on top in the sport. And one of the other areas hypnosis can help a lot is overcoming performance anxiety, which is very important in competition and pre-game jitters. So the first hypothesis they wanted to focus on was this hypothesis: is imagery technique using hypnotic state can affect performance or not? You know, in statistics, when we want to prove a hypothesis, we do split the hypothesis in two parts: the null hypothesis and alternative hypothesis. A null hypothesis is based on the fact that there is no statistical significance between the experimental group and the control group. And the alternative hypothesis is there is a statistical significance, there is a statistical significant difference between the experimental group and control group. And the goal is to exclude the null hypothesis. In this case, the null hypothesis was imagery technique using hypnotic state does not affect performance. And the goal was to see if it's possible to exclude or to rule out or to reject this null hypothesis or not. And if the p-value in a t-test is less than 0.05, it shows that there is a significant statistical difference between the experimental group and control group. And in this case, it is less than 0.05, and as a result of that, the null hypothesis is rejected. So this statement is wrong. I mean, the null hypothesis of H0, imagery teaching using hypnotic state does not affect performance. This is wrong. This is rejected. This is the way we use the t-test. So, in another word, with 95% confidence, because the p-value was significant, and we define significance by less than 0.05. With 95% confidence, we can say that imagery technique using hypnosis affect performance. And the mean of performance is greater than 3, and it shows that the student's performance is really improved. What they used for measuring the performance was Martin's sports imagery questionnaire, and it's like a Likert scale from 1 to 5, and they asked the subject to imaginate doing a sports activity, and it can be in different areas, like practicing alone. They imagining they are practicing alone, practicing with others, while watching a teammate practicing and competing, and the scoring is based on this. And if they can't imagine anything, it is 1. And if the imagination is extremely clear and vivid, that is scored as 5. And in this study, the mean performance was greater than 3 out of 5. The other thing they were focusing on was to see if which parameter or which constant or which predictor of the questionnaire is stronger in predicting the outcome, which is performance. So as mentioned, the questionnaire is based on practicing alone, or imagination of practicing alone, imagination of practicing with other, imagination of watching a teammate, and imagination of competing. They wanted to see if there is a correlation between these predictors and outcome, which is performance. In order to do that, they used a regression test, and in regression test, we use a coefficient which is called R square, and R and R square are indicating the correlation between the constants or parameters and the dependent variable or performance. If R square is 0, it means that there is no relation between the constant and dependable variable. But if it is 1, there is a 100% correlation between the constant or the parameter and the dependent variable or performance. So we use a coefficient, which is R, to measure the strength of relation. And in this study, again, the null hypothesis was the R square is 0, and the alternative hypothesis was the R square is more than 0, or there is a correlation. And when they did the regression test, they realized that the R square was 0.861. In another word, 86% of the variance is from these predictors: participating alone, participating with others, watching a teammate, and competing. You see, the null hypothesis is rejected because there is a really high correlation. 86% of the variance is attributable to these 4, and R value is 0.92. The other way to look at the regression is ANOVA test, and in ANOVA test, actually ANOVA and regression are the same thing, but ANOVA measures the categorized constant and categorized parameters rather than a continuous spectrum of constants. And the third hypothesis was like this. The null hypothesis was independent variables, practicing alone, practicing with others, watching a teammate practicing and competing, collectively do not affect performance. And the objective was to rule out or to reject the null hypothesis. And as you see, the null hypothesis was rejected. The interesting thing was the coefficients. The higher the coefficient is, the higher the relation or the correlation between the variable and when the constant and the variable is. And in this case, you see competing or imagination of competing has the highest coefficient. It's 0.5. It means that when the athlete is imagining he or she is competing, it has the highest effect on performance. The second one is 0.2, which is practicing with others. The third one is watching a teammate. And the last one, which is still significant, is practicing alone. So these factors, imagination of competing on top, the second one, imagination of practicing with others, the third one, watching a teammate, and the last one, practicing alone. These constants or these parameters or these predictors have a significant impact on performance. They are all significant, but as mentioned, competing is the most important one. The second one is practicing with others. The third one is watching a teammate playing or practicing, and the last one is practicing alone. And it makes sense because when someone is imagining he or she is competing, they are more involved emotionally, and actually the hypnosis becomes deeper. That's why the result is more significant and the impact is more strong on the performance. The results. First of all, it was done amongst some cricket team players between two colleges. One was the experimental group and the other one was control group. And the performance of cricket team players has been significantly improved after hypnosis and imagery techniques in hypnosis. And the regression analysis showed that the imagination of competing situation is more effective, is a more effective component on performance, followed by practicing with others, watching teammate, and practicing alone. It's not effective, it's effective, but they just copied and pasted from the original article. This is not only a study about hypnosis and sports. Actually, another study by Mr. Abdeen showed that the imagery techniques is not only useful for professional athletes, it's also helpful for non-athletes in exercise setting as well, which is very important. So it's not just about professional athletes, it's about non-athlete day-to-day exercise, which is interesting. So the performance is enhanced in that setting as well. And Sharon showed that imagination under hypnosis can increase the throwing accuracy comparing to the pretest and comparing to the control group. They were using they created a game to throw tennis balls into some targets, and then they measured the accuracy. And it was shown that imagery under hypnosis or hypnotic imagery had a great result on performance. Yeah, this is it. And let me just, because we are waiting for our sponsor, but it looks like she's not available today. So what I'm gonna do is I just play her video, hopefully.
One of our company principles is how can we make things better. This is our first Oceana Next announcement. So you're going to say, wow.
Recently, we asked our guests, what would be your vision for the perfect new ship?
We're delighted to hear
We're
that.
delighted to hear that. To our guests, we already have the perfect ship.
Our 684
Our
guests
684 guests from Ghana, Insignia,
Nautica,
Nautica, and Serena.
We're ready to raise that
We're ready to raise that bar even
So I'm very
higher.
excited
I'm
to
very
announce that we're
excited